our president has it, he usually leaves it for the last minute or for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I'll show the chart. Let me share my entire screen. Let me look at my charts. Yeah, I've been I was actually looking at Bitcoin today because it looks like it's trying to break out. It came down and but it can't get above that hourly 200. So I'm generally like, I'm curious to see what it does because it kind of just been stalling there. But on Friday, I just wanted to show, where was it? Question, what's the reason why you have unchecked the candle body wick in your chart settings for the ribbon? So the reason I do that is basically because I want to see the colors. So one of the reasons why Sadie does his colors like this is basically because he said psychologically, let's say that the ribbon's up and we have some down candles. If you see red, mentally, you already think like, oh, this is gonna, you start freaking out basically if you're in a trade. So that's why I uncheck them so I can see. And then I like seeing the white candles for the compression. This one here, show bias, because it mentally just gives me a like, hey, do not trade or be careful when trading. And then because yeah, if you check them, then you just have your regular colors. It really is user preference. If you just want like your usual colors that you look at your trades or your chart, then that's fine. But yeah, I wanted to show on Friday. Honestly, I should have really not traded at all. Even though I got into a call, here, kind of like around here, because I noticed that we tapped into the call trigger. And overall though, it really, like, the contracts weren't moving. And I think it was because of the low volume and the low volatility. And it being a holiday weekend, I think a lot of market makers were just not in the market. So I probably should have not traded. And honestly, I should have just gotten out here because we tapped the top of the opening range. And then after that, we didn't do anything much. And then all of a sudden we had this candle that I wasn't like at my computer when it happened, and I didn't even get a chance to get out. And all of a sudden, it came back down. So I took that L there, which I'm okay, because Fridays I usually have low risk because of that. Because Fridays you don't get that many clean moves. So I was just trying something and didn't work out. But I also wanted to show, I kind of wish I would have gotten puts around here, because once you start seeing all of these wicks here, and you start seeing that it's not getting above the ribbon, it was holding the 21 EMA. Sorry, I'm letting people in. It was holding the 21 EMA, but it wasn't, it was wicking. It was like you're in a tight range. Usually that means we're about to get a move, and we actually ended up going. You could have taken this trade to the bottom of the opening range and had a good put. I did eventually try a call that I was immediately stopped out. I was actually what I saw was going for was this divergence here, and how we were kind of holding this 3 minute 200, but it really kind of just stopped me. It wasn't moving, so I just kind of got out of that trade. I think I lost like $50. It wasn't, or like 40, nothing crazy, because I didn't want to, like I said, late in the day on a Friday, I don't want to risk too much, especially when we have like a kind of wacky price action. But when I was showing you those 10-minute candles, you could see on the, if you drill down to the 3-minute, you could see that we couldn't close above the 21 in the ribbon. So I was telling me that what Sadie calls a volley, meaning we're about to come down, was forming. That's basically one trade you could have taken, or I could have taken myself as well, but kind of missed it. Like I said, on a Friday, I was kind of like done with the market. Does anyone else have any questions? I'm kind of curious how we do here, because on the daily, we tapped the 13 EMA and pushed back up. We were close to those all-time highs again, but kind of didn't. And I wonder if we gap up on Tuesday with the news of, potential war, maybe we go up here to this. Well, actually, yeah, this is the monthly. The monthly plus one ATR would be 75.82. So that, I don't know, something like that could happen. So keep this level in mind. I'm really curious because I was teaching about last week about P call or put call ratio. We tapped again that 0.5 area. So I'm kind of curious to see, do we come back down? Because the last time that we did here, although this one went deeper, we did retrace. So I wonder now if we come back and have a little retrace into the ribbon again. So I want to see how Tuesday plays out. And then on the weekly overall, we kind of, we're like really away from the EMA. So kind of curious to see if we tap back into it eventually. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I got a quick question. Good
Yeah.
morning. How are you
Good
all?
morning. Good.
For our charting and our entries and stuff, are you using more SPX or are you using ES?
So it depends on the morning. I like to use ES because you have more data overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it? You tend to have more data, more overnight data. So I'll use that. But what I do like using SPX for is like the Golden Gate. So for example, on Friday, it opened at the Golden Gate. So or above it actually. So I figured we would go and tap into it at one point just because it opens so soon. But I use it for that. But then I look at ES because sometimes what ES does or SPX does is it'll tap into an ATR level and it won't, ES won't. So usually if it does, then once ES does, basically we tend to have a pullback because early on SPX tapped into that, the Golden Gate right here but SES had an only SPX, and eventually we got that push here, tapped into it, and came back down. So I kind of look at both. Usually what I do is I have like all my charts open. I have like where is it? I was chatting with my mom. I have different views of my charts. So I'll have like ES here and then SPX at the bottom, kind of just staring at both to see how they're both moving. At least that's when I'm at my chart or at home basically. But I'll flip through both and kind of see, because like I said, overnight or when the market's about to open, you have more data. And with SPX, you won't have enough data yet. And so you can kind of see like, hey, the ribbon's holding here. And then also too, when you have ES all in compression, like the hourly, the 3 minute, all of that, then I don't like to trade SPX, or I like to wait because I figure you're gonna get caught in that chop. And that's kind of like what happened on Friday. Um, and there was another day too. So you kind of wait for that to resolve compared to just trading blindly. And I think I have here on SPX, see, like SPX wasn't really that choppy, but ES was, and that kind of tells you like be careful.
Okay. Thank you. You had some questions over in the messages as well.
Let me look what it say. Can you explain? Okay. Okay. So yeah, so the way that I'm using SPX is, or ATR levels, is the way that Sadi kind of created this is you're basically using like a Fibonacci. So the the white line here is the previous day close. Then the blue line is the call trigger, and the yellow is the put trigger. A lot of times, if you're trading in between here, which what you call like the trigger box, you get a lot of chop. And overall, so these levels become, let me remove this. So basically this levels become support or resistance. And I have the YouTube video on my education channel, but he has a, you know, a playbook, you could say, where this here, the point, I forgot which one this is, but it opens what he calls the golden gate. And especially if it opens early on, um, you have higher chances that it'll go to ATR levels to which is the 0.618 level up here. And that's why Wednesday, I had that confidence because we Wednesday was a way, like my best day of the week, and it was because we open here. So we open above the call trigger, then we started to flip the ribbon, then we opened the golden gate right here, and I said, okay, let me let me wait for a pullback, and then I'll most likely we have a lot of odds that it'll go up here because it opened within the first 30 minutes of the market. And so I actually entered here because I thought this was going to hold. It pulled back, and I told myself I won't get out of my trades unless we go back to the previous day close, because that most likely means if we lose this, we might come back down to the call trigger. And then of course eventually it ended up moving. And then when you have these crazy candles that kind of happen really quick, the IV spikes up, and so the premium goes up quick, and it gives you bigger movements. And then one of the things when we were down here, psychologically, I was not looking at my portfolio because I think these were down like 60% here at that point or more. But if I look at my portfolio, you're going to see red and you're going to be like, oh crap, I got to get out. Whereas the chart's telling you, hold on, don't get out yet. And then it ended up working in our favor. It doesn't always happen that way. So for example, on on the following day, I decided not to trade because I had such a good day the previous day that I was like, I don't want to give away my wins basically, because I don't want to be too euphoric. But what happened Thursday was tricky because we did open the golden gate early on, but I thought we were going to come down here to that 73.85, but we never did. Um, but again, trading is all about probabilities. Although there's higher probabilities of it tapping, it's never 100% guaranteed. And then it was kind of funny that we ended up opening the golden gate here and nothing, but of course that's later in the day. So I figured it would be really rare if we went all the way up here. But it is, you can use these ATR levels as support or resistance. So for example, here, you could see that the call trigger was resistance, and then eventually it wasn't. Once you see this candle telling you, hey, we blew through that, now we're above it, you could have found an entry here and maybe targeted that 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 call trigger. So that's one way to look at it. And then also once you start seeing the phase oscillator trend down, you have to be careful, because then that means, all right, we might starting to slope down. And as you can see, like I said earlier, once you see those small wicky candles near an ATR level and you see it that it's not really pushing through, and then especially they're in compression, if you're in calls, you just have to be careful, and maybe you can start looking for, if you want to take a put, look for a quick scalp in a put. Any other questions? So let me check the chat. Okay, share the name. Yeah, I'll share the name of the indicator later. So yeah, that one was created, or maybe I can copy the link here. Let's see. Oh, I don't plot the range. I actually use that same indicator, the tick one. It plots it already. I have it set to the 10-minute here, and I have it open to show like the lines, because I like having that visual representation. Like I said, for example, here when you have all the things, like here, for example, we were starting to flip the ribbon. We were above that EMA 200, and then we were above the opening range. So you could have either taken it an early entry here, or once you see this this arrow here, which is the conviction arrow, that means that there's conviction to that upside, but there might be a quick pullback. And so we pulled back right here, and then it kept going. So that's one of the ways that you could have traded this. And and then we had this gap too. But yeah, personally, what I do is I have like a notebook next to me, and I'm like just writing it down on paper so I can like kind of remember, and it's like a visual reminder, hey, this is what I'm seeing right now. Maybe it's time, or start looking for contracts or anything like that. Any other questions? Could you just go over the mindset in another one of your trades from last week? Yeah. Do I use a certain time frame for confirmation? Yeah, so I like using the 3-minute for entries, the 10-minute kind of like for the trend, and or like the bias, and then the 1 hour for like that, okay, knowing like this is trending up or down. So when all of them match, that's when you have better chances of your trades kind of going well. So I don't want to take a put here, or you could scalp it if you want to, but just you have to be quick. No, if I know that the 10-minute and the hourly are pointing up, and vice versa. And then on the mindset, one of the things I told myself is, like, do you have the confidence in this trade? Because a lot of times if I just enter on a whim, usually it doesn't work out. And then I ask myself, is anything bothering you right now? Like, is there a rush? Or kind of check check yourself. I try to do that too throughout the day, every 30 minutes or so. Like, are you feeling nervous? Are you feeling your body tensing up? Or, like, are you breathing? Because sometimes when we get that flight or fight risk when we're trading, you start to like kind of like not breathe, and so your brain just starts to kind of not think straight. And so I try to remind myself, and I actually ask myself, am I chasing? Because a lot of times, like, I'll see this move, and then it makes me think like, oh, this feels like I'm chasing this. So I try to make sure I'm not getting FOMO. Um, and if you guys don't mind, I can go over what I did with Claude to help me kind of become my trading psychologist. So, let me open Claude. So basically with Claude, you have projects, and then you have skills, and basically the skills tell Claude like something that you want to remember. So I wonder where I can look for my skills, but I gave it a skill where I'm telling Claude, hey, this is what Sadie's um what he does, and this is like basically my playbook, my strategies, what type of trader I am, um, and give it instructions. So then you create a project where you kind of can save. I named mine my trading psychologist project, and so you can add files. And I added all these books that are kind of like a lot of the trading mentality books that I like to use, and that I've read before, and kind of have it form that. And then I went ahead and gave it instructions and told it like, hey, you're my personal trading psychologist. You specialize in zero DT options trading using SATs, indicators. Your role is not to be a cheerleader, a yes person. You're a trusted coach who tells Rose the truth. You help evaluate, help her stay in the plan, my rules, my entries, my daily schedule, my playbook setup. So basically giving it everything that I do so that it remembers. And then that's when I ask it like, hey, I'm about to prepare for a trade. Can you help me? Can you guide me? So then it starts asking me, what's your setup? What's your thesis? Before give me what you got, and we'll work through the checklist together before you touch a single contract. So it starts telling me like kind of, it's things you should know what to do already, but sometimes you just need someone to nudge you and tell you like, hey, can you help me do this? And it'll start doing that. Um, and then I could tell it like, I told it like, hey, I had my best trading day of the year. Which setup did you take? You want to know exactly what you did. Did you honor your targets? Don't size up. And then that's what it started giving me advice. And that's kind of like I told it like what I saw. And then that's one of the reasons why I didn't trade Thursday. And it tells me what you did right. Price almost dropped out, never tapped PDC, and you held. That's not luck. That's just trusting your plan. First target, final target. That's textbook execution. You read the setup correctly. And then it tells me like my entry was not that great, so worth noting. And you kind of talk to it back and forth, and it asks you questions, and then it tells me what to carry into tomorrow. Um, Kind of like someone to. It's kind of weird. It feels like someone to tell me like, hey, wait, because that's one of my biggest issues is I sometimes just see a setup and I just want to immediately jump in, or not wait for that confirmation. And so this is kind of like advice, kind of like a quick advising, like, hey, wait for it. Um, and then I have another skills where I gave it, like I said earlier, I gave it Sadie's basically all the notes. Somebody compiled all the notes from what he teaches, and I shared it. I think it's in the Discord. I shared it so that you can like give it all your notes, and then it tells me. I like that it tells me like basically, are we in compression? Are we? What's it reading? Are there any active setups? Um, the if then plan, what are the risks, and kind of like a bottom line. And I kind of like that because even though at the end of the day I'm going to go with 100% of what I'm doing, like I'm going to trust myself more than like AI. But it's a good kind of reminder, or kind of like, hey, did I miss something, or just anything. Like I kind of like having something to kind of remind me like this is the setup that I was looking as well. Yeah, and I do have a monthly subscription. I do like the $20 Claude. And yeah, I know you can connect Claude directly to TradingView, but I'm a lot of times I'm trading at work, so I don't have the I can't connect there. And then how does it actually know your entry? Basically, because you're giving it, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, this is the trading notes that somebody created. And so basically here it kind of knows all of what he does. Um and and so that's how it knows the entries, because it knows like, hey, don't you're not going to enter if the ribbon isn't like stacked, or if you're way above. So that's kind of like how it knows. Or like, for example, like it knows about the 10-minute orb, or like, you know, it's not going to tell me to enter here when it's in compression, things like that. Um, but yeah, you can give it. I actually gave it those settings documents, and then this too as well, and I gave it all of that and kind of gave it my rules, because I do have a playbook somewhere here. But yeah, so I basically gave it my playbook here, like 10-minute opening range. And so it knows all of these things as well, so that it knows like, hey, when I ask it, it'll like I said, it's not perfect, and you trust yourself over that, but it's a good way to kind of get started on knowing what to look for. Any other questions? Yeah, I know it's a lot, especially when you're starting. I would say take your time. Um, Try learning one of the patterns first and kind of stick to that. For example, where's my playbook? You can just look for the flags into ribbon and use that, and try, or even the 10-minute orb, and just kind of study that pattern and start small. Um, that way you start going one by one by one till you kind of learn everything. and start getting comfortable. Because like I said, I was saying in chat, the market moves really quick and some days. And so, by the time I alert, things have moved, or if you don't know what's going on, it's harder to kind of follow and kind of trust your judgment, because sometimes I'm human, I make mistakes, and maybe you could see something that I'm not seeing, and you're like, well, let me not take this, or let me wait. And so the more you understand the charts, the easier it is to follow. And then eventually the goal is you don't need to follow anyone, you just do your own thing. Because I think we all kind of started that same way. I remember when I used to follow alerts blindly, I was like, what's going on? What's going on? Especially if you're doing zero DTE, it gets harder to follow someone, and you start seeing red or green, and you're like, you have no idea what's going on. But yeah. And then also, like, because these for Sadi, I learned from his website, or I love that all of his stuff is free, so you can go to his website, and he explains it too. And he has a YouTube channel, so you could kind of go through everything on your own too, and kind of start learning his setups. And like I said, I've watched them many times, and it takes repetition, because then you'll see the patterns over and over again. And once you start to really see them, then you start getting more confidence. Oh, let me take this. I've seen this before, and all that. Any other questions? I think really, like I said, really curious to see how we turn out this week. Another method I use a lot is market structure and the strat. And so ideally, I would like, I don't know if this is going to form like we'll pull back down a little and then push back up, or is it trying to come down a little? Um, Kind of look at the structure right now, and the hourly's pointing up. So I would like to see, maybe if we push back, pull back into the fib, then to the upside if it wants to, or if it because that's kind of like what we did earlier on in the week. Where was it? Yeah, I had it kind of like here. We push back, then push back up. So we're kind of following a somewhat clean structure. The 4 hour hasn't really come down either. As you can see, it kind of went even below here, and it almost, if it would have broken here, the 7337, then we would have had a market structure shift, but we never did. So that's telling me that bulls are still in there. So now you look for your next swing low over here, and then swing high, and then see, do we push back, or let's see, are we going to continue pushing forward? Or we can even be establishing a range here, and maybe what we can start doing is trading in here. So now you start seeing, hey, this is my range. Maybe we come back down, and now like this might be the range that we're trading in before the next big either push up or push down. So I'll have this area kind of like as key for next week. Yeah, I do look at NQ a lot. Let's see. especially for divergence or strength. Because I noticed, like, I was looking actually on Friday. I thought we would go a little higher if NQ grabbed that previous week high, but it never did. So, um, but I do look because sometimes what we'll see is trying to find an example. Sometimes, let's see, what day is this? I think this is a good one. Oh yeah. So for example, here, um, ES swept those equal lows, and then NQ didn't. And so when you see that divergence, usually NQ leads. That's why I call her the queen. Um, and you could see that because this was telling us, hey, NQ is gonna push up, and it eventually did. We ended up kind of having a nice push to the upside. And in the same, if I would have seen here that, let's say that on Friday we would have, ES would have swept those previous week highs and then NQ wouldn't, so you form that divergence, then maybe it means that we're going to push back down, but that hasn't happened yet. Um so yeah, that's one of the ways that you can kind of see that divergence and notice if we're going to get a bigger move. Yeah. Any other questions? But yeah, kind of Frankenstein a lot of different strategies and have found a way to kind of make it my own. Or like I said, I like looking at satis for day trading, and you can use it also. You don't have to just use it for SPX. It works in any kind of works in anything. Like you could see here, Costco hit that monthly +1 ATR and then came back down, and it actually came all the way down to the call trigger. But as you can see here on the hourly, it formed an hourly divergence here with the face oscillator, and then it held above the call trigger, and like I said, it kept going. So that's, you could use it in for any, you don't have to just use it for SPX or RES. You can use it for any type of trade or ticker basically. Oh, that's Jody in the background. Thanks. She's my little Velcro dog. um, but yeah, does anyone have any other questions? If not, this was recorded and I'll post it so that we can have it for the future, for future reference. And I'll continue to do these weekly. I think I find them helpful because they help me kind of look and backtrack and kind of see what I either missed or what I did good, and then help answer any questions. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what we do next week, and I think we'll have another great week. I'm looking at VIX as well because it's starting to get below that 17 area, and that's one of the reasons I feel that on Friday contracts weren't moving because we were slow, and it's getting low. So anything below, like if we start to drop even to 16, you'll see a lot of action like Friday where we kind of chop, have one little good move, and then um, it really becomes a little bit harder to day trade SPX. And that's when I either look into maybe swinging SPY or even looking for swings in other things. Um, like, but yeah, so I'll start putting out more swing trade ideas as well, and alerting those as well. So, okay, that's a good question because I don't do it all the time, but what makes me leave a runner is, for example, on depending what levels we're hitting. Um, so for example, on here on Wednesday, um, we hit we hit that Golden Gate ATR level that I like, and I said I got out of a few contracts, and I said I'll leave some runners, and I'll just keep pushing my stop up, but then also I'll exit if we lose that EMA 21, because if we don't, that usually signals we're going to have more of a trend day, and then I'll say I'll leave my final target to that plus one ATR, and that's where I actually got out. Um, and then I got out of everything because at that point I said we've already gone up a lot, and at this point we might just consolidate, especially once you see these random big candles on the lower time frames. Usually we get stuck in them, and you kind of get that consolidation, and that's kind of like what happened. Whereas days where we tend to be more choppy like this, I might just exit the whole thing at once and either look for a better entry. Like for example, here, if I would have traded on Thursday, I may have exited my entire position here. Um, and sometimes I'm fine if it's leaving money on the table. That's going to happen with SPX all the time, because that really would have been a good exit for me just because of the previous day high also. So it really is a lot of times too, after a big day, I'd rather trade small, and kind of have quick exits. And like I said, sometimes I'll miss like a big run, but overall, as long as I'm compounding, I'm okay with it. And also, if we're stuck in the trigger box, so between the call and the put trigger, um, we may get a little bit more choppy. So I'd rather exit everything and wait for a better entry than um, than kind of leaving runners. And sometimes I just want to get away from the charts. Like I'm done for the day. Yeah, so I know I don't use Gex as much, the gamma exposure, but I've had subscriptions before. But yeah, that's additional data that you pay. I know Unusual Wells, they have like their Periscope, that you pay for the Unusual Wells, and then you pay for the extra subscription. I think it's like $5 or $10 more a month. Um, but I know some members in the chat do have it, and it is helpful to kind of look for to see where they're positioned. But also it could be like a double-edged sword, because the other day, I think it was on Tuesday, um, exposure was showing that we were going to go down to like 73.30, I think, or even lower. I forgot. Somebody had mentioned, and then we ended up just going back up. So it is like I prefer to trust the charts more, but of course it is like a nice. I will use it more as an additional confluence than like the do or die, basically. My ribbon settings, yeah, I have it. I think I have them on the SATI channel, but I basically haven't touched anything. The only thing I added was this show candle bias compression. And you do need to download it from his website, because if for some reason it doesn't let, SATI said it doesn't let him add it in TradingView, so you get it there. Yeah, any more questions? If not, I'll let everyone get back to their Sunday and enjoy the holiday weekend. Thanks for showing up. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.